Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. This is Rabbi Mahmood and welcome back to lecture number 19. Today we are going to start with the language change, a very main component of our course, and we'll see that how language change has actually come into this language. What were the things that have contributed towards the change? The thing that we were discussing in our previous lecture, in lecture number 18, in lecture number 17, when we were saying that language change is a big debate even in these days. We'll see that whether this debate has been solved, or whether there is something that a progress, that language change is a kind of progress, or is a language change is a kind of decay that is going on yet. So we'll be looking at different things, and then we'll be coming to one conclusion. The language change in the history of English language is our today's topic. So let's move on to the change. The first thing, language changes with the time. Yes, so it's true. You have been noticing it throughout our period, throughout our time, throughout our throughout our lectures, that yes, language is changing. Language is changing, and rather language has changed with the time as well, with the passage of time. What language was initially in the earlier stages of the life, it is not the same in today's world. It has changed with the time. It has acquired a new shape. It has acquired a new form. Linguistic, although we agree that language changes with the time and the language changes are there, but one thing to remember is that language changes are really very slow. They are a very slow, gradual process there is a gradual process of language change. There are not a lot of changes that go on. So we are saying the language changes, and yes, the language changes are really very slow. Yes, we know a great deal of the English language because it has written records. Yes, initially in our primitive periods, in our prehistory, in our Old English period, there were not much written record of the English was found, but yet we have noticed that English printing press, it was discovered in 1476, and at that time it was the Caxton was the first printer, and with that printer English became accessible to many of the people, and we have known a great deal because it was reserved. It has been reserved, and it has been passed on to the upcoming generations. Yes, the history of English reflects non-linguistic history to some extent. Yes, we have seen that while we are discussing the history of English language, we are not primarily focusing on one thing. Our focus is varied. Our focus is quite different one. We are looking at so many different things at one time. We are not just focusing on the language, its structure, its components. Rather, we are going beyond that. We are trying to look at the geography. We are trying to look at the lands, at the regional variety. We are looking at the socio-cultural, political, economical, financial, all the things, all the components that have contributed in the growth and the development of English language. Yes, it was. We are saying that the history of English reflects non-linguistic history to some extent. In 449 to 1066, it was Old English period that we have already discussed in detail. Then 449, Saxon invade Britain. In 658, there was Cadman's hymn. In 8th century, there came Beowulf. Beowulf was the first written epic of English language. And then in 1066, there was a Norman conquest that came on, and it caused really the changes in the history of English language. Then In 1066 to 1500, there was a Middle English period. Within Middle English period, there were certain other things, certain other events. For example, in 1387, we find Canterbury Tales, a very, very famous book of poetry that was written by Chaucer. And then 1476, that was Caxton's printing press, the invention of Caxton printing press we have already gone through. Then in 1500, a great vowel shift. We have not yet looked at this aspect, rather we'll be covering this aspect in the next lecture. But before this, I just wanted to give you a brief and comprehensive overview of language change, so we are doing it right now. From 1500 to onwards, it is regarded as a modern English period, and a modern English period, as all of you know, that it is divided into two main streams. The one is early modern English and the other is late modern English period. Changes in the language, it refers to changes in the grammars of the speakers of language, including phonology, morphology, syntax, lexicon, and semantic components of the grammar. Look, this is very, very important point. We are saying that the change in language, we are talking about actual language change, and we are saying that the change in a language, it refers to what? It refers to the changes in the grammar. Firstly, the change would come in the grammar of the speakers of language. The speakers who are speaking one specific language, there would come a change in the grammar of that language. Grammar is also known as syntactical structure of that language. Grammar of the speakers of language, including, then there would also come a change in phonology, the sound system of the language. There would come a change in morphology, in the word formation system of the language. Then there would come a change in the syntax, that is the grammatical structure overall of the language, the lexicons, the vocabulary items of a language, as well as the semantic component of grammar. Semantics is the meaning component of language. Change in language is not one single monolith phenomena. It is prevalent, it is available in so many of the things. If we are talking about the change is going to take place not only at one single point within a language, rather each and every level, all the 7 levels, all the 6 levels of language are going to be affected by this change, and this change has actually come. Yes, the regularity of the sound change has been noticed. For example, the regular sound correspondence are due to the changes in the language's phonological system. It is sounds that changes, not the words. Yes, one very basic formula of the change is that it's the sound that change, not the words. Words come at the secondary level. The primary level is that of the sounds. If there is going to be a change in the sounds, then the words are going to be affected by that. Okay? The regular sound correspondence are due to the changes in the language phonological system. The main changes are coming in the phonological system, in the speech sound system, in the system of the phonemes and the way they are combined up, not the words. Regular sounds correspondences can be found among older and newer forms of the English, different languages as well as dialects of one language. Regular sound correspondences can be found among older and newer forms of English. We are saying, yes, there is a regularity of the sound change, means it is a continuous process. The things keep moving, the things keep going on. The regular sound correspondences can be found, it can be found among older and newer forms of the English, you can see that the sounds that were present in the early modern English period, or the sounds that were present before that time, let's say in the Old English or in the Middle English, perhaps these are not the same that we have right now. They have already changed. There are different influences that have come and they have made them change. Different languages as well as dialects of one language. There are also regular sound correspondences in the Native American languages Cree and Ojibwa. Yes, for example, in Middle English, let's see that how the things were pronounced in Middle English, and then how they changed into the modern English period. Look at the word. This is this sound. This is moose. It is nowadays is pronounced as mouse. From Middle English, it had changed from moose to mouse. This was whose, and now it's house. It was geese, and it is geese these days. These are the different examples of the sound change that have come into the English language. Then some English, French and the Spanish words. For example, in English the consonant f is pronounced as f. In French it is pronounced as p. In Spanish it is p. In English we have father. In French we have per. In Spanish we have padre. In English we have fish. In French we have peasant, and in Spanish we have pescado. These are different examples of the sound change that have come in the history. Some Southern English and non-Southern English. We have pie and we have pa. This is pie and page. This is a is pronounced as I. J sound. It ends with j sound and it starts with a sound. Genetically related languages were dialects of the same languages at an earlier stage. That is, they developed from the same parent language. For example, English and French are genetically related languages. Yes, we have come to the conclusion that all the languages of the world, they have come from the same branch. They have risen from the same roots. Phonological change. Phonological change, for example, can be seen in this way. In Old English, the word was next, whereas in modern English it is night. It was drugs, it is drought in modern English. In Old English it was so. In English, in modern English it is so. There is another word, for example, lo, and it is l. K and k and k. Okay. And hall and hollow. These are the two different examples. An interaction of phonological rules may result in the addition or the loss of phonemes and in change in the lexicon. Yes, with the passage of time, when the things are changing, when the language is changing, so there can come a great change in the lexicons as well. Not only the phonological rules are changing, but also these loss of phonemes and can bring a change in the lexicon as well. Look at the example. The s in the verb house and th in the verb bathe, pronounced as z, and because of the rule, when a voiceless consonant phoneme occurs between the two vowels, voice that consonant. Yes. Look at the rule and look at the example once again. The s in the verb. The s in the verb house and the in the verb bathe. It's bathing. It's not bath, it's not it's bathe. Were pronounced at z. For example, house. And because of the house, and because of the rule, when a voiceless consonant house, sir is a voiceless consonant. It phoneme occurs between the two vowels, where the two vowels are oo and e. When a voiceless consonant, that is sir is coming between the two vowels oo and e, it voice that consonant. It starts giving voice to that consonant. I am writing it here. House. We are saying that sir is a house. This is a silent or the voiceless consonant. So this is true. When this silent or the voiceless consonant, it comes between the two vowels. These are the two vowels. Okay. When it comes between them, it becomes voiced, and it voiced that consonants. Voice means those consonants are voiced consonants. When you produce them, there is a vibration in your local chord. For example, when we call it z, it's become house. You would notice that there is a vibration in your vocal cords. Later, the final vowels was deleted from the verb house and bathe because of the rule deleting unstressed short vowels at the end of the words. Okay, the set of phonological rules can change both by addition and the loss of rules. The set of phonological rules, it can change both by the addition and the loss of rules. The two rules mentioned above were lost eventually. They had already been lost. Okay, then came the great vowel shift. We are going to talk more and in detail about this great vowel shift in our upcoming lecture, but for today, just to give you a brief idea that what this great vowel shift was. The great vowel shift is a primary source of many of the spellings inconsistencies of English, because our spelling system still reflects the way words were spelled before the great vowel shift took place. Actually, there are some inconsistencies that were found in the olden verbs or in the new verbs. So this great vowel shift is going to look at all those shifts that had taken place in the pronunciation at different stages. Morphological change. The first one is the morphological change or the morphological inconsistency that is found. For example, the suffix is means to make. Finalize means to make final. Privatize, to make private. Okay, look at the examples that are given is finalize and privatize. It was a morphological change. Morphological change, that is a change that comes in the forms of the verb. Sorry, in the form of the words. It's not verb, it's the words, where you are changing the words. Okay, the change occurs on the morphological level, on the level of the words. Classical Latin case, endings were added to a noun stem according to its function in the sentence. Yes, there were some endings that were added in the words according to the functions that they were performing. Okay, for example, look at these cases that we have today in our modern day English. These cases are, the first one is nominative, genitive, clothing, dative, accusative, ablative and vocative. These are different type of cases that are found in the nouns. For example, there is a noun and the noun lap plus us. Lapus was made the wolf, and lupus, it was one word was made, that was lupus, and the genitive case was lup plus I. Lupi, a sheaf in the wolves is known as lupi. Lapo, give food to the wolf. Lapam, I love the wolf. Ablative is lap plus e. These are different stems that have been added to the specific noun. Okay, and these are the words that are written. This is how it started ending. The main word or the root is a lup. If we add us, it becomes lupus. It has some other meaning. If we add I, it has some other meaning. If we have O, it has some other meaning. Lupum, it has some other meaning. Lupi, run from the wolf, and lupi, wolf, come here. So these are different examples that shows that if we are going to add certain words with the stem, with the base of certain words, it is going to make some differences. It is going to make some changes in it. Case on the Old English singular words and the Old English plural words. There are some nominative cases. For example, in Old English it is stone and stan, or in plural English it is stones. And the same example is from again the same Old English. One is the singular and the other is plural. If the case would be genitive, it is stonus, and stana means it makes stones. Stone in dative case as well as stones in the plural. Accusative case, it is stone and it is stone. The difference the lies is that in plural they are all ending sa sound towards the end, and they are just there's a difference. Otherwise the cases, the singular items actually basically differ according to the cases. Genitive, it is apostrophe s, otherwise the rest of three are the same. Modern English lengthens the stem vowel and reduces the suffix vowel of the words. Yes, see what modern English has done? It has reduced it. Modern English lengthens the stem, the main stem or the root that was the root of the word. We can say the main. It is lengthy. Modern English lengthens the stem vowel. We are talking more about vowel because before this we were discussing great vowel shift, stem vowel, and reduce the suffix vowel of the words. The stems have been lengthened and the suffix or the prefix, they have been shortened. Certain short unstressed vowels are dropped out finally. If there are some words that have a lot of unstressed vowels, so they would be dropped out finally without anything. Syntactic change. Now before this we have discussed all the lexical and the morphological change, and now we are looking at the syntactical changes. Yes, modern English is an subject verb object combination language. Yes, all of us know that. The syntactical rules permit less variation in the word order. The syntactic rules, all the grammatical structures, the grammatical rules, they would permit less variation. There is not a lot of variation in the word order. In modern English, negotiation is expressed by adding not or do not. Yes, modern English, we are saying it's a very, very strict, it's a language of subject, verb and object. The syntactic rules permit less variation. The syntactic means the grammatical rules. It would permit very less variation because, as we have already discussed, the more modern we are being, the more rigid we are being, the more specific we are being about certain things. The syntactic rules permits less variation in the word order. In the modern English, negation is expressed by adding not or do not. Actually, there are the two words that you would add, adding not or do not. Okay, we may also express negation by adding words like never or no. We can also add the words like never and no. For example, if there was one word that is I am going, it has changed into I am not going. If we say it's I went, then I did not go. If I go to school, I never go to school. I want food, I do not want any food. Or I want no food. These are some of the syntactical changes. And just please remember, again and again I'm repeating the thing, that with the passage of time we are being more rigid. Our modern English does not allow us to change the things, to change the patterns. We are following it, we are following it as they really are. Contraction rules. Yes, there are some contraction rules as well that have been introduced in the modern language. For example, do not, it refers to, and contraction we have made it don't. We have contracted the things, we have concised the things in the modern language. From the word will not, we have contracted and made it won't. Middle English. The negative element occurs at the end of the word because not is put after the auxiliary. Yes, we have noticed the examples, we have noticed the syntactical changes that a few time before, or in the Middle English period, towards in the Renaissance, in the early modern English period, it was at the trend that not was put after the auxiliary verb. Or same was the case with the prepositions as well, that the prepositions were kept towards the end of the sentence, towards the end of the complete sentence. This is a thing that I was talking about modern English, whereas in Old English the negative element occurs at the beginning of the contraction because it precedes the auxiliary in the sentences. See the change, a great change is there. We have talked about contractions. We are saying in Middle English the negative element occurs at the end. It is occurring at the end of a word. At the end of a word, not the sentence, because not is put after the auxiliary. For example, do not, have not, was not, is not, are not, am not. These are different auxiliary verbs. We are putting not after the auxiliary verb. And then in the Old English, what we used to do, the negative element occurs at the beginning of the contraction. At the beginning of the contraction because it preceded the auxiliary in sentences. Yes, the negative element occurs at the beginning. It is coming from the last position. It is coming to the beginning position of the contraction. It is coming before the contraction. Okay, because it preceded the auxiliary, because after this the auxiliaries are going to come later on. Not do, not have, not was, the things, the words like that. Comparative and superlative constructions were also there in that period that have taken a great change in the history of English language. Comparative and superlative constructions include, for example, in the Middle English, we form the comparative by adding "er." Just one thing, that in the modern English, what we are doing, we are forming the comparative degree of adjective by adding "er" to the adjective or by inserting more before it. Okay? There are the two instances. In some instances we add more if it is a comparison, and even then sometimes we would add "er" before it. The superlative is formed by adding "est" or by inserting most. Most would come before the est comes towards the end. The good examples, for example, are good, better, best. Better and best. You see, the first one is comparative degree, this is comparative, and this is superlative degree. Okay, then the next formula was that sometimes we will add more and sometimes we will add most. For example, beautiful, if there is one word that is, we call it beautiful, the second superlative, or sorry, the comparative degree could be more beautiful, and the third degree can be most beautiful. But there is another actually law that we are having. Whenever we use most beautiful or the third superlative degree, we actually what we do, we don't we use the determiner before that always. Now the Old English period. In the Old English period, there are the double comparatives and double superlatives occur, which today are ungrammatical. Yes, what was happening actually in the Old English period, the structure was quite different from modern English. There were double comparatives and double superlatives. Yes, comparatives but double. The two comparative degrees coming with each other. The superlatives but the double superlatives that they used to come with each other, which today are ungrammatical. These days we find them ungrammatical. For example, the words like more, gladder, more, lover, most royalist, more gladder. More gladder is a combination of two double comparatives. It's a combination of double comparatives. More is a comparative degree, separate comparative degree. Gladder with an addition of er is another comparative degree. But in the Old English period, these two used to come together. More gladder. As it makes no grammatical sense, so it was later on rejected. Then comes more lover. Love with the comparative degree of er, lover, and more, again another comparative degree. So the double comparative degrees are coming with each other and perhaps making it ungrammatical. Then the next example is most royalist. Most royalist. These are the superlative degrees. Again, in the same tradition of comparatives, the superlatives are also coming with each others. The two most is one superlative degree and it is a different one, and the second royalist with the addition of the word est is another superlative degree. This is the second one. Now what happened actually, most royalist, these two degrees, these two superlative degrees, they are coming together. It makes double superlatives. And this was a tradition of Old English period, and whereas in modern English, that it has changed and we can use just one superlative or comparative degree at one time, and this is more acceptable perhaps. Lexical change. Let's see that how lexical items change. Lexical items, the change of lexical items is more related to the vocabulary items, so the change in the vocabulary items. Lexical change includes the addition of new words. Okay, some new words are added. Changes in the meanings of the word. Some words are there, but still their meanings are going to change. Then the loss of words. Some words were there in use in the earlier history, but later on they are lost somewhere and they are not found. As a result, what happens? Some new words are in the process of being found. Methods to form new words are what? The first one is compounding. We have discussed a lot. We have looked at so many examples. Compounding is the recombining of old words to form new ones with the new meanings. Recombining of old words. Look at the condition. The condition is that they are the old words. They are coming from some old origin. They are the old words. They are combining together, compounding together to form new ones. They would combine and make up some new word. For example, there is a word cheese. There is a word cake. The compounding of the word cheesecake makes a new word with a new meaning. Same is the case. Look at the examples that are given. Big mouth. Big is a word, mouth is different word. Chicken hearted. Chicken is one word and the hearted is a different word. Chicken hearted makes, it is a compounding process. Egghead. These are the words, these are the new words that have been joined by the, these are the old words actually that have been joined by the process of compounding, and they have made some new words with some new meanings. Derivational process. Derivational process is there. For example, there are different derivations that are attached to these words. For example, the word, one word is uglify. But they have done actually the uglification. It's a derivational process. It's a process that has been assigned to one word. Finalize has been turned into finalization. Uglify, uglification, finalize, and finalization. These are the new words with some new meaning. Other methods are coinage. Coinage, where you coin some new word, deriving words from the names or the blends, etc. For example, look at these examples. The borrowing can also be done. Borrowing from other language is another important source of the new words. It occurs when one language takes a word, the morpheme from another language, and adds it to the lexicon. It has been taken, it has been borrowed from some other language, and it has been added into your own language. There are two divisions basically. There are some native words, and the second is non-native words. Non-native, the loan words. Okay, there are some different ways. There are some direct, some words are directly entered into one language. For example, feast. There are some words that are indirectly entered into one language. For example, algebra. Introduce. What languages did English borrow from? Similarly, other languages borrowed words. As we have already talked earlier a lot, that English has borrowed from so many languages, from different sources, and same is the case with the other languages. They have also been borrowing the words from different languages. For example, Japanese from Chinese and European words, especially American English. Yes, they have been borrowing words from different languages. There is some loss of words as well. A word is lost through inattention. Nobody thinks of it, nobody uses it, and it fades out of the language. As if somebody is not paying attention, not somebody, I'm not talking about one single word. If overall the speech community does not pay attention to some specific words in a language, definitely with the passage of time it is going to get lost somewhere. Some semantic change now. Before this, we have looked at phonological change that has bring change in the language. We have looked at morphological change. Then we moved on to looking at the syntactical change that has taken place. Then some lexical change, that how different words have changed. And now we are moving on to the next change, that is a semantic change in language. Broadening become wider and general. For example, holiday and picture. Semantic change. Semantic is actually concerned with the meanings of the words, with the meanings in the language. Semantic change is concerned with the different things. For example, the first one is broadening, where you are broadening the meanings of the certain things, where the things are more generalized. Before this, maybe one word can have one specific meaning, but what happens with the semantic change, actually one meaning that was specified to one thing, they can be generalized and they can become more widen, they can broaden, and they can have an effect on some other categories as well. For example, holiday and the picture, holiday has got quite a broader meaning, picture has got a broader meaning, and this is what the semantic change has come in these two words. The next example, the next process is that of narrowing. First is broadening. You are generalizing the things, you are generalizing, so the change in meaning is coming. Why? Because you are generalizing the meanings of the language. Now the second is narrowing. You are trying to narrow down, you are trying to specify the meanings of certain words. Rather than being vague and rather than being general, you are trying to bring the meanings to some specified certain objects. For example, meat and deer. Yes, meat, I gave you the example of this word earlier as well, that in perhaps Old English or in the Middle English period, meat used to refer to all kind of foodstuffs that were available to eat, to all kind of eatables. But with the passage of time, look at today's meaning of meat. Meat is a kind of flesh, a special flesh that is used to eat, and it is only confined to mutton, to beef, to fish, and to chicken, and to nothing else. So these are the things. You have narrowed down the focus on a few words. Meaning shifts. For example, bead and silly. The meanings are, for example, if the meanings of certain word are used to refer to one thing, there can come a change in the meaning and they can move on to shifts. Reconstructing dead languages. Let's see that how we can reconstruct the dead languages. And the question is that, are there really some dead languages in the world or not? This is actually a debate. How do the languages die? We are talking about language death. Is there any language death? Again the same question, again the same critique, that language is changing. We are saying language is changing, so whether it's progressing or decaying. Is there any language death? Are the languages dying? If the language is dying, so how can we reconstruct the dead languages? Is there any process? Let's see what this is. The branch of linguistics that deals with how language change, what of changes occur, and why they occurred is called historical and comparative linguistics. Yes, we have one specific branch of linguistics that deals with the issue of language change. It is basically the historical and the comparative linguistics. It looks historically at the evolution of language. It sees that which thing is changing and how it is changing, what are the changes that are taking place, whether in the language or whether outside the language. In 1786, Sir William Jones suggested that three languages, Sanskrit, Greek and Latin, had the same origin. Yes, it is what we had discussed in our first lecture, that all the languages have come from just one thing. They have actually descended from the same mother tongue, from the same mother language. Rasmus Rask pointed out the relationships among Sanskrit, Latin, Greek, Persian, Germanic, Lithuanian and Armenian. He was the first scholar to describe formally the regularity of certain phonological differences between related languages. Yes, he was the first person. Why Rask is important in linguistics? Because he was the first scholar, the first person who described formally the regularity of certain phonological differences between related languages. The languages who were related, he pointed out, yes, that there are the differences that are found. Next is Grimm's law. Grimm's law can be expressed in different terms of natural classes of speech sounds. For example, there are voiced aspirates, there are voiced stops, there are voiceless stops, fricatives, and I'm not going to go into the details of these things. We are going to look at some other factors of the language change. Another law that was given was that of Werner's law. When the preceding vowel was unstressed, f and x underwent a further change to b, d, and ing. Werner's law, he's actually talking again about the sound system, about the sound shift. There were, initially in our lecture we said that today we are going to discuss the language change, and we also said that we are going to discuss the language change, and the language change is basically concerned with the phonetics and phonology of one language. While we are talking about phonetics, we are talking about the change of that language. So we are saying that the preceding vowel was we are also looking at different laws, we are also looking at different theories that were presented by the different people about these things. Werner's law is when the preceding that comes first, when the preceding vowel was unstressed, when it is not stressed, when it is not put emphasis on, f and z underwent a further change to b and d. For example, if there is a vowel that is unstressed that comes before the consonant f, so it is changing to b and d and ing. Okay, then there comes new grammarians. New grammarians, they actually, it's a combination of the two words. Neo is means new, and grammarians, who it's a group of the people who talked about the grammar, who have given different new concepts about the grammar. They viewed linguistics as a natural science and believed that laws of sound change were unexceptionable natural laws. Yes. See what was the theory that was given by new grammarians. They have viewed linguistics as a natural science. They said that language is a natural science, and believe natural science. Why? Because it is concerned with the language. A language is what? Language is something that is quite natural, that comes quite naturally. It is that is naturally acquired, that is naturally spoken, that is naturally learned. Why the grammarians say that it's a natural science and believe that laws of sound change were unexceptionable natural laws. They said that these were the natural things. The change in the sounds would be there. It would come because these are unexceptionable natural laws. Stammbaum family tree theory, it was again given by some other linguists. They say some linguists thought that languages had a life cycle and developed according to the evolutionary laws. Each language can be traced to a common ancestor. So it's true. We have looked at the tree of family languages. We have seen that all the languages have emerged from one family, that was a Proto-Indo-European family. Proto-Indo-European family further being subdivided into 7-8 main branches, and then these main branches were subdivided into this. So when we say that all these are descendant from the one main source, we can say that all the languages have got just one mother. The rest of the families are sisters and brothers with each other, and their further subdivisions are the cousins among each other. Because we are talking about a family, so I'm using the terminology of a family. Each language can be traced to a common ancestor. The comparative method is a method of reconstruction of a parent language from a comparison of its daughters. Yes, what are we doing? Actually, there was a comparative method of language analysis as well to identify the language change that has taken place. So the comparative method is a method of reconstruction of a parent language. We are looking at that how the parent language was constructed from a comparison of its different daughters, daughters and sons. And then in 19th century linguistics, beginning with the August Sculpture in 1861, were able to initiate the reconstruction of the long lost parent language, so aptly conceived by Jones, Pope, Rask and Grimm. That is the language called Indo-European. Actually, the traces, they were able to jot down the main history of Indo-European languages in this century. There are some historical evidences of these things as well. For example, earlier pronunciation is provided by the non-English words used in the manuscripts of English. Yes, they have actually given the historical evidence by saying that these are the scripts that are found in the earlier Englishes. Then misspell words according to the way they pronounce them. They actually, when the pronunciation was changed, definitely it is going to be written in a different way. So they are saying that if they were misspelled words, the words who could not be spelled in the right way, then definitely they were not going to be pronounced in a right way. Clues are provided by the writings of the prescriptive grammarians of the period. Clues are provided. Different evidences were given, different evidences have been reported by the writings of the prescriptive grammarians of the period. Prescriptive grammarians, all the prescribed grammarians of that period, they actually provided a few of the hints, a few of the rules that these are the things that can be contributed towards language change. Clues to earlier pronunciations are provided by the puns and the rhymes in literature. We have already talked about puns and the rhymes in literature. Then by comparing the pronunciation of the various words in several dialects, we can reconstruct earlier forms and see what change took place in the inventory of sounds and in the phonological rules. Yes, very true. By comparing and contrasting the things, by looking at the current phonological situation of a language and the old phonological situation of a language, we can see that how many changes the language has gone through and what is its current status and what were the factors that were contributing towards this change. The different spellings are also a clue. And linguists have been able to establish language families and reconstruct the histories of such individual languages. Yes, they have actually how linguistics have traced all these changes. This is that they have looked at different spellings and then they have seen that from which language family they belong, and then they have identified the main differences. They first study the languages and dialects spoken today and compared the sound systems, the vocabularies and the syntax, seeing what correspondence exists. Yes, these are a few hints that they have given. They first study the languages and the dialects spoken. Firstly, they are going to look at the dialects spoken today and compare the sound systems. They are going to compare the sound systems of different languages that exist. They are going to look at the vocabularies, the lexical items, and then the syntax, the grammatical structure, and see that what are the differences that have taken place. The genetic classification of language has already been done. Historical and comparative linguists, they classify languages into families and reconstruct earlier forms of the ancestral languages. Yes, for example, in the 5th century, Germanic is a parent of the modern English and the modern German. Yes, we know it, that English has come from Germanic language. English and the Germans are sisters. They are the sister language. They are coming from the same one mother tongue. An early form of Germanic and early forms of Latins were the sisters. The respective offsprings are cousins. Yes, this is what we have earlier talked about, that the respective offsprings or the descendants would be cousins and the rest of them would be sisters. A very important, a few important points about the language is that a language dies when no children learn it. Definitely, when we are talking about language change, while we are talking about language decay, we say a language dies if there is no other child to learn it. Maybe let's say as my native language is let's say Punjabi. If I'm not speaking Punjabi, if I'm not teaching it to my children, then my children definitely will not be able to know that what Punjabi was. After a few generations would come when you would see that the Punjabi has already died because there was no children who has learnt it or who has passed it. All the speakers of the languages are humiliated by some cataclysm. Okay, the speakers of the languages are absorbed by another culture that speak a different language. The speaker of the languages are absorbed by another culture. The speakers, they would be absorbed by some other cultures, by other language that speak a different language. So definitely it is going to die. Why do languages change? Now some reasons. No one knows how or why languages change. Linguistic changes do not happen suddenly. Changes are more gradual, particularly changes in the phonological and the syntactic systems. Definitely, the language, if we say that English changed, you know, I know, everybody knows that it did not change over a night. It did not change over a year. It took years and years and centuries and centuries. It took ages to English to come up to this stage. So these are very, very gradual. Particular changes in the phonological and the syntactic system, these are really very, very gradual. A basic cause of change is the way children acquire the language. Perhaps the way I am using English is quite a different one. Perhaps the way that I am using Urdu, that is my native tongue, native language, is quite different from the way my parents learned. And their way of learning Urdu was quite different from the way their parents learned. So the things are changing. A basic cause of change is the way children acquire the language. Actually, the ways change. So the languages change with the passage of time. The reason for some changes are relatively easy to understand. Sometimes you can easily understand, but phonological changes in the languages are same sounds, and the combination of the sounds are earlier to pronounce than other. Vowels are frequently nasalized before the nasal consonants. Yes, these were the different changes. Internal borrowings were also done. The reasons overall, we borrow from one part of the grammar and apply the rule generally. Yes, we chose up one part of grammar, we took up the rule, and then we applied it to all. Yes, as we said, the subject, verb and object, that is a rule that should be applicable to all the sentences. But this is not life, this is not language, this is not perhaps 100% acceptable and applicable in today's language. It is also called analogic change. Many factors contribute to linguistic change. Simplification of grammars, elaboration to maintain intelligibility, borrowing and lexical additions can be there. Language changes from the same reasons all things change, that it is nature of the things to change. Yes, I remember one very good saying of my teacher. She once said that the law of change is the law of life, and then she said immediately after that change is the spice of life. Really, change is the spice of life, and the things that really change, they makes the life tasty, they makes the life worth living. If there will be the sameness and there would be uniformity, it would grow bad. It will not be perhaps worth living then. Some languages of the world at the end of the chapter, which includes, I would be showing you a table which includes the number of world's languages. It shows genetic relationship, the principal geographic areas where the language is spoken, and the number of the speakers. Yes, summary today. So with this we come towards the end of our today's lecture, and let me give you a quick summary of what we have done. We have started by giving evidences of the linguistic change is found in the regular correspondences. Yes, the first thing is that the law of change is the law of life. Things are changing, continuously changing. No one is the same. Even when it's not the language only that change, it's rather everything. It's the life that changes. It's everything that changes. Phonological, morphological, syntactical, lexical, and semantic changes occur. Yes, they do occur. Their words, morphemes and phonemes and the rules of all types may be added. They're lost or altered. If we are talking about the words, if we talk about the morphemes, if we talk about phonemes, all rules of all types may be added. They sometimes lost, they sometimes get altered. The meaning of the words and the morphemes may expand, narrow or shift. The meanings can also change. So The next point that we discussed was the study of linguistic change is called historical and comparative linguistics. We have also looked at a particular effective technique for reconstructing dead languages is the comparative method. We start comparing and contrasting the different languages, then definitely we'll get to know that which is better. There are language universals as well as differences, the things that are similar in the languages, whereas at the same point there are differences in the languages are also found. So with this we come to the end of today's lecture, and I hope that you enjoyed this a long change over the history of English language. I hope that you would continue struggling for reading, and we'll see you again. We'll be right back in the next lecture. Till then, take very good care of yourself, and Allah Hafiz.